everywhere and fillest all things, treasury of blessings, and giver of life, come and abide in us, and cleanse us from every impurity, and save our souls, O good one.
Hey. Tonight we're going to do something a little different. I've never done this before. I was preparing for our talk tonight, and one of those, algorithmic videos came up, and it had a provocative title. And I thought, I'm going to watch that and maybe use it to supplement our class. And I watched the video. I had no idea what it was going to be, and it ended up being fabulous. A really beautifully produced Orthodox video. I thought it was a Protestant video when it came across my feed. In fact, it was Orthodox, and it really touches upon a number of things that we're talking about and says some things very, very well in a very, very polished production. This is almost, when I was watching it, it reminded me when I was a kid in grade school, we often had school assemblies where we would all get out of class and everyone would go to the assembly hall or the auditorium and watch an educational film. I'm sure they don't do that anymore. Do they do that anymore?
They did it when I was in elementary.
Okay, so obviously you can just do it like this in the classroom now. You don't have to get everyone together in one place where the projector is. But it always had a certain feel for these educational films. And I almost had this sort of deep nostalgia for this. So I thought we would do this. And my plan for tonight, I'm going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to say some introductory words to the video. Then, for those of you watching the live stream either tonight or later, we're going to stop the live stream there because it's going to be much better for you, since you're already watching YouTube, to continue watching YouTube, but watch this video. The title, but you can just type into YouTube search AD 369 ? Okay? If you type that in, AD 369 ? You will find this video from Harmony Productions. And the subtitle is, What Did Christians Do Before the Bible? No one's seen this before, right? Does this ring a bell?
Nope.
You might have seen it?
A little bit.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Good. So I will actually be playing the video here and then commenting on it while we watch it as I feel is appropriate and throwing some additional things in there. But I want to do a little setup ahead of time so that when we cut our live stream and other people are watching from afar, just watch the video. It's brilliant. It is 30 minutes long, so we're going to stop at 8:30, so I'm going to stop talking at 8 so we can watch the video and have a little room for comment, okay? Never done this before. I hope you don't feel that it's me cheating a little bit on my preparation. It really isn't. It just felt so appropriate to what we're doing that I thought we can't pass this up. I think it really will give us a really great perspective. So I want to start with saying a few introductory words about what we're going to see and some of the important features about it. And the first thing is that in the modern world, or if we want to be technical, the late modern, postmodern / post-postmodern world that we live in, we've lost a lot of ways of perception. We've lost a lot of ways of paying attention to the reality that we have to navigate constantly. And in fact, it seems as if the goal of technology is increasingly to replace our attention to the world with our attention to the technology. We're letting technology do all the navigating, right? This is self-evident when we use our GPSs to drive anywhere instead of memorizing routes or just knowing routes or following maps and learning to read maps. But it's also true when we fill our time with video content. Paradoxically, we'll be watching video tonight. That doesn't see, and what I want to say is that it doesn't mean that there isn't good stuff out there, but we're very much, and this argument is being made in a lot of different places, we're ceding control of our attention. We're ceding control of our ability to navigate our way through the world. And more importantly, to navigate our way through what is real and what is not. One of the fascinating things about the times we live in, and the distressing thing about the time we live in is the degree to which, in ways that I would never have imagined, we have just, we suffer one assault after another upon our ability to trust that information is true or trustworthy or authentic. We can't trust that anymore, right? You can get now, using AI and all kinds of different programs that are all free, you can make anyone on earth say anything you want to. So how do you know what you're watching is true? Because we know we can fake it all. So how is it not all fake? I never thought we would see the decline, the broad stroke decline of confidence in our doctors, in our scientists, in our professors, in the world of knowledge. And it's one of the consequences of what happens when you flood the world with unmitigated, uncurated information. We lose our bearings. This theme of losing our bearings is, I think, very much apropos to the video we'll see tonight. It was apropos to a fascinating thing that I saw last night on TV, actually, that is sort of like a topic that I find very fascinating. This is a National Geographic program where this woman who's sort of an adventure traveler slash blogger goes on different adventures, and then there's a cameraman and it's sort of like Bear Grylls. If you think more popularly of someone like Bear Grylls, he goes on these crazy wilderness adventures. She does similar things, although they're a little bit more cultural, anthropological, and the sort of adventurous, like running ultra marathons and that sort of thing. In this particular one, she was going into the Amazon rainforest, and she went way up in a small little boat, way up the Amazon River to a tribe that is very, very, there's no roads there, there's no phones there, there's no modern infrastructure whatsoever. This was a tribe, one of those tribes you hear of in the Amazon that was not contacted until very late in history. So this particular tribe she was going to visit, the very first contact with outsiders they ever received was like in 1978 with the government of Brazil making that contact. And as often happens, that contact killed almost the entire tribe, simply through the flu. They had no immunity to the flu, and they got the flu and it killed them. We don't think of the flu that way, although the flu kills a lot of people every year in reality, but their entire tribe was whittled down to about 15 surviving members simply because of the flu, and they had never seen outsiders before. And the whole point of this, since then they've recovered a bit and they have more contact with outsiders, and it's possible to arrange these sorts of meetings. And her goal, this adventure traveler, was to have them teach her how to navigate her way through trackless Amazonian rainforest, and to learn to navigate the way that they navigate. And I'm fascinated by this kind of thing because it often involves a way of paying attention to reality that we have lost. A similar example of what this is like is when we know through documentary evidence that Pacific Island natives they aren't anymore, but they were capable of reading signs of the water and being able to navigate the open ocean simply by looking at the water, right? How would early explorers navigate the ocean? Largely through celestial objects. It's our ability to see the sky or to hug the coastland that enabled people to initially travel. And native Pacific Islanders could actually read signs of current and different types of water to know exactly where they were and exactly which way their island was. And we know this because it was documented by various early explorers that witnessed this firsthand and had no idea how they could do it. It seemed like magic. It absolutely seemed like magic to witness this firsthand. If you've ever been in the ocean, look down at the water, what do you see? You see water. You don't see like, oh, my house is clearly that way, right? No, I mean, we've lost that if we ever had it. So what was interesting, and I need to move this along here, but what was interesting is that, of course, there are things you have to learn to do this. They actually went through rituals, religious rituals, before they went into the wilderness, including, and she submitted herself to this, they dig up a root and they grind it into a paste and they make a liquid out of it and they drop it in your eyes. And it's a stimulant and it's extremely painful. But she like watched all of them like writhing on the forest floor and she's like, I guess I have to do this. And so they put it in her eyes, and it's supposed to heighten your perception, sharpen your vision. And while you're preparing this whole ritual, you're supposed to be saying things like, the deer runs fast. You're trying to channel in this culture the spirits of the forest and draw to yourself their gifts and their abilities, because animals know how to navigate their way through the world. And the other thing is, one of the villagers dresses up as a forest spirit, this very frightening figure, and then takes these like saplings and whips them on the back. Everyone has to be whipped on the back. And it wasn't mild, like she had welts all the way around her torso from submitting to this. And it was sort of like an offering of pain to the forest gods before you were to venture out into the forest. The interesting thing was, there are simple little tricks. Obviously, they go out and they start breaking saplings as they walk so that you can walk back by following the recently fresh broken saplings. And you have to be aware of, this was broken today, that one looks like it was broken last week, right? You have to start to learn to pay attention to those things. There was a way of creating a small log or using a small log and banging it on certain types of trees, which produces very hollow thumping sound, which carried very effectively through the forest. And your people, your village could hear you doing it. They would answer the same way, and you would learn to follow the sound, okay? You could also shout into the air, and they would shout back, and you had to kind of echolocate, if you will. You had to just follow the voices, which is interesting because a lot of this kind of wisdom culture of doing things that now seems very dangerous to us relies on a community of transmission, okay, heavily. It relies on a community of transmission. And there's a lot of examples like this. There's even examples, some of you have probably seen this in the news, like people who are visually disabled can use echolocation. They'll click and hear the return of the sound off of objects and navigate their way around objects even though they can't see at all. Something that seems completely impossible to us who have sight, but what happens is when you decrease your one sensory organ, you can open the attentiveness of other sensory organs. One of the things that's very important to the video we're going to watch is it talks about the importance of oral culture in the early church. And oral culture basically means this: things that are truly sacred and truly important in the ancient world, and this is almost universal in the ancient world, were deliberately not written down. Okay? They were deliberately not written down because writing was considered culturally a diminishing of the living sense of the transmission of knowledge. They passed on knowledge through the speech, through talk, through oral culture. We distrust this. We who have lived now 500 years beyond, more than that, the printing press. We trust things that are in writing. I don't know if you really said something until I see it in writing, right? I don't even know if I see a video of you saying something, because anyone can fake that. But if it's in writing and it's notarized, and we have all this system of trust that stipulates how we experience what we know. In the ancient world, oftentimes the most important knowledge was transferred from a rabbi or a philosopher teacher to a group of disciples. This was a sacred relationship. It was not a casual relationship. It wasn't like, oh, I had a good 5th grade teacher. That's not what that was like. It was like you lived. If you were a disciple of a great teacher, you lived with your teacher, just as the disciples stayed with Jesus all the way through the Gospels. There's no indication that they all went home to their own homes like every night and were with their family. They lived with him. And there was a ritual context to the transmission of knowledge. And when a teacher spoke the most important things, the duty of his disciples was to repeat that speech to each other and make sure they all heard the exact same thing, and then recite it to each other in the exact wording that they received. And this is actually the way that the apostolic teaching was transmitted in the early church. Jesus taught the disciples, they received that teaching and kept it. They heard it and kept it very, very powerfully. They talked about it. They workshopped it. They made sure they had it right. We have a tendency to think of the game of telephone, where you put people around a circle and one person says a sentence, whispers it into the ear, and everyone goes around, and by the time you go around, it's completely, mutilated. It's like, why is that? That's because we don't know how to pay attention in the way that oral cultures knew how to pay attention. Just like we don't know how to read the South Pacific ocean currents to figure out where our island would be. Just like we don't know how to wander into a Amazon rainforest with no trails and no ability to see distant markings or mountains and figure out our way to navigate through. We've lost that ability, and so we have a text. But that text came from oral culture, and that's going to be highlighted heavily in the video. That oral culture was a powerful and trustworthy way of transmitting the teachings of our Lord Jesus Christ to his disciples, and from the disciples, the apostles, to their disciples. And they weren't written down until later, okay? So this subtitle of the video we're going to watch, What Did the Church Do Before the Bible? Is a provocative question, isn't it? Because for many Christians, what are you talking about? First the Bible came, and then we figured out, by reading the Bible, we figured out what the church should be. And you talk to a lot of people, and they take that as an absolute assumption. You have the Bible, and then you figure out the way the church should be. And in fact, as the video will show us, that is not the way it worked. There was a time where there were no Christian scriptures, but there was lots of Christian teaching, but it was received in a very, very specific way. Another way of understanding this is that the very most important things were not written down because they could not be written down. And what that means is that what was written down was written so that you might enter into the actual participation of that reality which cannot be written down, which is the person of Jesus Christ himself. And this is, if there's one thing as you're watching the video, when we read the sacred scriptures, we have to understand that what has been written for us is not meant to be the blueprint of the church. It's not meant to be exhaustive. It is meant to be the pathway, the guide, so that you can unite yourself to Christ, so that you can experience Christ, so that you can join Christ. It is a gateway to an experience, not a text which freezes information and then you memorize it and then you just kind of have it, okay? That's the important thing. Just like the things that this woman was learning in the Amazon, these were all keys. These were all ways of navigating the land. The scriptures are the way that we have of navigating the reality of the experience of Christ. This is the physical aspect of Scripture. It's the physical aspect of Orthodox worship. We enter into a church, and there's all kinds of things that we do to navigate our way through the space of the temple. We enter into sacred space. We cross ourselves 3 times with 3 bows. We go to the icons. We cross ourselves. We kiss the icons. We're greeting those saints who are already there with us and in our midst. We're learning to physically inhabit the forest of the church. And really, the beautiful image of this is that the horos, the center chandelier that we have, is meant to be the image of a forest clearing where you go to meet the beloved. and the beloved is in that clearing, and who is in the clearing at the top, which is Christ himself. The whole way we move through the temple is a navigation route, and the scriptures give us the way. They indicate how we relate to Christ. They lead us into or initiate us into an actual living experience. The number one way we misread the scriptures is if we think that first the teaching was codified and then frozen, and now all we have to do is interpret it, and if we all interpret it with an open heart and mind, we'll all agree with what it says. We'll see in the video why that doesn't work. And then we'll construct our Christian lives out of this. This is now second, third, fourth level of just simple personal interpretation. The primary interpretation of Scripture is simply to live the way that the Scriptures are indicating, okay? That's our introduction to the video. Now, if we want to cut the live stream, go to this video, again, if you're out there, 8369 ? And we will be watching it here, but watch it at home. And I hope this is fruitful. I think it will be. Okay? Let's cut that. And I need to figure out where I want to be for this.